Welcome back to another GTN Coaches Corner, where we answer your triathlon related questions. Remember, you can leave them below this video or any of our videos. Use the hashtag GTN Coaches Corner. And we will be answering your question next week. On this week's show, aqua jogging, we discuss the benefits and how to do it. Also, zone 2 again. Someone doesn't seem to have a zone 2. Also, someone else has a zone 2, but they seem to be too slow in their zone 2, so we answer their questions. Some quickfire transition questions, and finally a question on eating around training, especially late at night if you're training late. Let's get straight to your questions. Right, starting with this one, Jamie Furman, one of our regular question askers, says hashtag GTN Coaches Corner, could you discuss the benefits of aqua jogging and provide a few key pointers for anyone looking to give it a try, whether due to injury or exposure to any form of another form of cross training? This one's actually, I think we've answered this a long time ago, but it's kind of evergreen because aqua jogging is quite useful. It's surprisingly effective at maintaining your fitness and even building running fitness when you can't actually run, when you have to run without the impact because of an injury or something like that. You can quite effectively strain all those muscles that you use for running without actually getting any of the impact. It's surprisingly effective. Now, there's two types of water running that you can do. You can do deep water running where you don't touch the ground at all, but you will need some kind of floating device, normally a waist belt or chest belt that holds you in position, in an upright position, so you can do the full running motion. Or you can do shallow water running, which is generally waist deep running and more of a running motion with your foot actually touching the ground. The deep water running is actually easier to simulate your running motion than the shallow water running, because what you'll find is shallow water running, you tend to just bounce up and down, which feels really awkward, but you can't actually get any traction to push you forward, so you can't get that drive phase. Whereas deep water running, you can actually really push your foot backwards and simulate that running motion. It is surprisingly tiring. You'll be surprised how much it takes out of you. As with any training, start slowly and build up slowly. Just because you can run an hour out on the road, doesn't necessarily mean you should be doing straight away into an hour of water running. You do need to adjust to it. So take your time, build up like you do with any training. But it can actually help you to keep that fitness or even build fitness when you're trying to avoid the impact load. Also, I would suggest if you're doing it outdoors, definitely wear some sunblock and a hat, because you will get burnt being out there. And also, you'll need music in your ears for a good aqua jogging session, because it is incredibly boring. You hardly move at all. You'll be creeping along the pool. It might take you 2 minutes or 3 minutes to get all the way down one length of the pool. So bear that in mind. Take some music or a podcast, because it's very tedious, but it's good for you. Okay, FX Saltwater asks, GTN Coaches Corner, thanks so much for the input. Also for your other videos and clips, it really helps get the gist of it everyone is talking about as a beginner. Anyhow, I do have a question. I really say I trust my Garmin with the accuracy of my heart rate, simply checking pulse and low heart rate. But how come zone 1 and 2 basically don't exist for me? My heart rate goes up really fast, but it's not that I feel exhausted or anything. For example, I've been running for an hour today with 155 to 160 beats per minute and could easily have gone further. Thanks again. Okay, this one just keeps on coming. The zone 2 question. Everyone seems to have the same issue. Basically, what you've done is you've run at a running pace that you felt was your running pace, and then you trained at that running pace repeatedly again and again and again, and it's become your running pace at around 155 beats per minute, and you're pretty effective and efficient at that running pace, which is great. And if you're happy to keep running at that pace and keep running for an hour forever, then keep going. It will keep you fit and you will be a decent runner, no problem. However, if you want some range, if you want to be able to run significantly longer but at a slightly lower pace, or you want to be able to run significantly faster at a higher pace, you need to train that specific range. You can't always go out and run the same pace at 155 beats per minute. So you need to start training your zone 2, and that means setting an upper limit. Now, for beginners, generally zone 2 is 60 to 70% of your max heart rate. However, for beginners, I generally suggest you go from 60 to 75% of your max heart rate. Make that zone 2 just a little bit bigger to give you a bit of leeway and allow you to kind of build into it. And then set an upper limit for some of your sessions, maybe 1 or 2 sessions, your easier runs per week of that 75%. Don't go above it no matter what you do. Just run really slowly and you will pretty soon find that you get more effective, more efficient at that pace, and you'll be able to run pretty close to what you were running at 155 beats per minute down at 140 beats per minute. And then when you do run 155 beats per minute, you'll be going that much faster, and it gives you this whole range. And then you can push that further on and you can do longer sessions at zone 2 and push it further on and do higher intensity sessions well above 155, and you get that range, which is what we're looking for. But you do need to stick with it for a while. It takes a while for you to train any energy system. If you think about what it took for you to get to the point where you could run an hour at 155 heart rate, it's going to take you about that amount of time to get comfortable running an hour at 140 heart rate. So give it some time. It's not going to be an overnight thing. Okay, quick fire transition questions. First one, socks in T1 or T2, or not at all. I'm going to go with, if you're going to put socks on for the run, it doesn't really matter whether you put them on in T1 or T2. Either you go socks not at all, or whichever is more comfortable. If it's going to be a cold or particularly wet bike ride, then I definitely put them on in T1 so that your feet stay a little bit warmer. You don't want your toes going numb on the bike, because when you get off and run, it's going to be that much harder. However, T2 is absolutely fine. And unless you are going at the really pointy end of the field and want to save 10 seconds, it's worthwhile putting socks on, because you don't want those blisters. Should I have a drink, food in transition? I would say no. It is far more efficient and effective to have food and drink whilst moving. Transition, you're basically stationary. There are other things you need to be doing, like changing your shoes and changing your kit. So do that, and don't faff around with eating and drinking while you're not moving. You can eat and drink whilst you're either biking or running. So wait till you're moving forward, and then you will lose a lot less time. Final, I can't get my wetsuit off fast. What's the trick? Okay, first trick, practice. You have to practice getting your wetsuit off. It's not as simple as just pulling. You should definitely practice, and practice every time you get out the water. Even if you're not in a rush, you don't have anywhere to be in a hurry, still practice getting off as quickly as possible. A couple more tricks: a little bit of baby oil or Vaseline around your wrist and around your ankles will make your wetsuit slide off those tight restrictive places a lot quicker. So try that and you'll see the wetsuit comes off much easier. Finally, do I really need elastic laces? No, you don't really need elastic laces. However, elastic laces are a very simple, very cheap kind of upgrade to your running shoes. They don't really cost you anything. There's not really any risk associated with them. You have to bear in mind that they will feel slightly looser than normal laces, even though they aren't. Don't over tighten them, because you can actually cut the blood supply to the top of your foot off. But elastic laces are definitely a good solution for T2. You will get into your shoes a lot quicker without any faff, without having to stop and tie your laces. So yeah, use elastic laces, but no, you don't really need them. Okay, on to 2 more questions, longer questions now. Tess Van Kintz, 9129, hashtag GTN Coaches Corner. Hi GTN, how do I increase my speed on my easy zone 2 runs? Another one. I feel like a snail at my 8:30 minutes per kilometer, and if I don't run that slow, my heart rate will creep over 155. I am able to run a sub 35k, so I find the difference very large. Well, that's basically also 155. It's the same question previously, more of the how to the last question's why. Why is the heart rate low, so high? Now this one is how do I change it? Well, to get efficient at zone 2, that easy aerobic zone, as I said earlier, you do need to train it. Similar to the last question, where you get really efficient at zone 3, you need to get efficient at zone 2, and that means spending time in zone 2. First, I would suggest though, make sure that your heart rate zones are accurate, because the guesstimated ones based on 220 minus your age or something like that are not very accurate. You should test your max heart rate if you can, but max heart rate tests are very hard. Or the ideal would actually be to do a VO2 max test in the lab so you can see what your heart rate does. And then you can work out your zones from there. And then, as I said earlier, adjust those zones for a beginner. So that 60 to 75% is your zone 2. And then do your easy runs in zone 2. As I said earlier, that is the solution. You've got to spend time in zone 2 to get efficient at zone 2. And a lot of people say, but I have to run so slowly. And yes, that is part of it. You have to run slowly to start with. Now, don't be too strict with yourself on that 75% limit, but be fairly strict if you know what I mean. So let your heart rate creep up, especially if it's an uphill or something like that, but make sure you bring it back down as soon as possible and spend as much time as possible. 80% of your easy run should be in that zone 2, and then you will actually be training it. You'll get more efficient at it, and before you know it, you'll be doing all your easy runs in zone 2 with no problem whatsoever. Okay, final question. It's from Icarus1 or Icarus1. Hashtag GTN Coaches Corner. Due to work commitments, sometimes I don't get home until late. Then I perform my planned workout, but it may be very late by the time I finish. Last night it was 11 p.m. Whoa, that's hectic. What is the best thing to eat so late in the evening? Often I go to bed straight after my meal so I can be up at 6:30 for a swim before work the next day. Whoa, serious commitment going on here. I like it. I don't eat before I swim. Any advice? Thanks for the great content. Okay, this is a pretty tricky one to navigate, but there are some things you can do to make it a bit more manageable. I would suggest that what you do is your main meal, you have 2 to 3 hours before that evening's session. So if you're working late and you're only going to get your session done at 10 p.m., eat at 3 or 4, 5 p.m. in the evening. Have a proper meal then with carbs, a bit more carbs, a bit less protein so that it's more digestible, but that should be your main meal of the day. And then after your session, before you go to bed, you can have something more lean protein, like chicken breast or something like that, that doesn't have a lot of carb content because that will send your blood sugar up and make it hard to sleep, but does top up that protein that you didn't have earlier on in that meal, but also gets you recovering for the following morning's swim session. It is tricky to navigate, but it is doable, and you have to bear in mind that when you're training like you're training 2 sessions a day or even 3 sessions a day up to late at night, you are not eating regular meals. So you don't eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You eat pre-training meals and you eat post-training meals. And that's all you eat, really, is pre-training meals and post-training meals, pretty much like a pro does. There are no breakfast, lunches, or dinners. It is just eating around training to facilitate the training as best as possible. You do need to bear that in mind. As long as over the course of the whole day, you're getting your full complement of nutrients that you need, all the carbs, proteins, fats, and minerals that you need, it doesn't really matter where in the day you take them. If you move them around so that you can get your sessions in effectively, just make sure you aren't limiting your actual intake, because that obviously is a recipe for disaster. If you're not getting enough in because you don't feel like eating at 11 p.m., that is definitely going to affect the next morning session and have a domino effect on the rest of your training. So do make sure you are eating, but really move it around the training. Eat so that you can train rather than eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I hope that answers your question. Remember, if you have your own questions, in the comment section below this, hashtag GTN Coaches Corner, we could be answering it soon. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next week.